Dateline Edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
Hello, and welcome to all of you paranormal truth seekers. My name is Chris Foust, and I am the Simuologist. Today, we have a fascinating interview you don't want to miss, so relax, sit back, and enjoy the ride into the paranormal. The other day, I had an amazing interview with paranormal investigator Marc Coppell. All the way from New Zealand, the haunted man himself, Marc Coppell has a background immersed with the paranormal. Now, at a young age, both he and his family had fled their home in the 1980s from a poltergeist outbreak that included multiple third-party witnesses, including a neighbor. Marc continued to have visitation experiences with spirits who have passed on, including ones that he should have no knowledge of. Marc has also been a university honor student and even wrote a paper on near-death experiences. He has worked in various paranormal teams, and he has had encounters on the outskirts at the infamous Skinwalker Ranch, which is really, really cool, including a Bigfoot encounter on UFO Hill. This is the first video of the almost 2-hour interview that I had with him. Marc was gracious enough to bring along some fascinating photos and recordings to share with us. He truly is a remarkable researcher, and in my opinion, he has some type of paranormal evidence which we need to seriously look at and evaluate, as I believe it has a much larger implication in the world of extraterrestrials, Bigfoot, and even life after death. I really hope that you enjoy this first segment of this interview. I'm really excited to have you on because you sent me some pictures as well. Now, the pictures that you sent, I'm telling you, they look like craft. They don't look like birds. They look like little, they look like metallic craft in a way. What are you seeing when you go out like that?
Well, most of the time I don't see them because they travel so fast.
Okay.
However, April of 2017 in Coromandel Peninsula, I was shooting B-roll footage. Mm-hmm. I went there to shoot B-roll. I see this giant sphere appear right by this wild mountain. This is the mountain that has a lot of history of what they call the Moihals, or the New Zealand's version of Bigfoot.
Okay.
And also what the Maori call Paraperehe, or the fairy people. Then I couldn't get this giant sphere on camera. It just faded right out in front of my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I was trying to reason. I was thinking, well, is this some sort of reflection? It didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. This is a wild mountain. It's 3,000 feet high. And but afterwards, when I was doing B-roll with my DSLR, I was just doing handheld footage. I caught all these smaller scout craft flying in the foothills. So one of those is one of the images that I sent you. It actually does a mid-air flip at around Mach 3.
Really?
It does a mid-air flip and goes right behind the foothills and goes straight up into the air. I hit the mother load. So I'm working on this documentary. There's a lot of amazing stuff happening. There's direct communication.
Yeah.
We can talk about lights in the sky. This is dealing with communication. This is taking it up to another level.
This is. I agree with you.
People don't get to this. They don't normally get to this level. It's there's a spiritual aspect to this, is what I'm trying to say, Chris.
Yeah. Now, there's, like you said before, there's kind of a mismatch of everything. So we're dealing with extraterrestrials. We're dealing with, you said, more like a Bigfoot type creature, right?
Bigfoot, yes.
And then we're dealing with spirits, essentially.
Yes.
So
and it may cross together.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I think what I'm trying to make a point on too is here in America, what we have is these Native American cultures tend to have these spiritual encounters, but then they also have physical encounters with creatures, which we'll call cryptids at this point. They vary all across, the continent. Essentially, there's the West Coast to the East Coast. It's kind of like they're all different. But then you have UFO phenomenon. And I'm telling you, we have Skinwalker Ranch, which is in Utah, and it's not far from me. I mean, it's really just right over the mountains for me. Colorado has a lot of UFO activity, but at the same time, we have the Bigfoot activity. And of course, there's a lot of spiritual activity as well, too. So when you tell me this, I'm trying to think there has to be a way, and you're onto something. You might be onto putting these pieces together to where it all becomes one thing, one phenomenon. Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to say is,
Yes.
like you are holding the keys right now to discovering a connection between them. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the way that I see this. Yeah.
Yeah, when I've had many experiences in my life, including helping others with hauntings, working with paranormal teams, many personal experiences. So the phenomena throughout my life has changed. So you mentioned Skinwalker Ranch. It's a very good example of what can happen when there's portals, when dimensions are opening up. It's incredible. There's
Because,
even a scientific study as well that was conducted,
yes,
like never before.
They have pretty much had every experience there except for the Bigfoot experience. And for them, the physical experience is what they consider the Skinwalker, which is the big werewolf-looking creature. But at the same time, they have the physical creatures. They have the noises and the spiritual phenomenon that happens because they have homesteads that are there. So in those homesteads, they've had ghostly encounters. They've had portals open up. They're finding out with all of their research certain things, and that some people believe it and some people don't, and that's fine. But the truth is that they are doing something to put it back into a mainstream category. Now they just label it as Skinwalker, which is a Native American folklore, essentially. Those are witches. Those are spiritual type entities. They are dealing with things that are unidentified aerial phenomena, so the UAPs, which is how we're classifying them now. They're also dealing with UFOs. They have had actual aircraft sightings that they don't know what they are, not just mysterious lights. So when you show me these pictures, you're showing me craft. You're saying that you've seen lights out there. You're saying that you're hearing Bigfoot, correct? And I think you even sent me a picture that looked like a Bigfoot too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've taken other people out with me, and sometimes I'll experience what's going on, including finding footprints. Now, there have actually been Bigfoot seen by Skinwalker Ranch. I have talked to researchers over there. I've talked to some of the Ute tribe over there.
Really?
Even the Ute tribal police have chased them, jumping across houses, throwing trash cans.
Okay.
I mean, there's the mishmash of the paranormal / ufology over there. You mentioned Skinwalker. Now, Skinwalker is the Navajo word for a shape-shifting witch. Now, there was a local school teacher over in the Fort Duchesne area. His name was Joe Junior Hicks. He took about 400 plus accounts of UFOs, all kinds of encounters, even daytime landings. He mentioned in Georgia Knapp's book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, how the Skinwalker could be synonymous for Bigfoot. It could actually be them too. There have been giant footprints seen there as well. One of the researchers who's been out there a lot to Skinwalker Ranch had written books on the subject. He told me that he had boulders thrown at him, which is Bigfoot phenomenon. This is exactly what happened to me.
Yes.
Yeah, this is exactly what happened to me when my first Bigfoot encounter was by Skinwalker Ranch in 2013, up on UFO Hill there.
Yeah, I know right where that's at. Okay, so were you there on the other part of the property then, or were you allowed to go on to Skinwalker Ranch? There's an adjacent property that goes up on that ridge there.
Yeah, no, I did not actually go on the property per se. However, I did go up to the front gate.
Yep.
I observed from legal areas, which obviously is pretty far away. But regardless of where the gate or the fence line is. Locals have experiences. It's not just the ranch area, though.
Right.
However, there seems to be portals that seem to open up that have been observed opening up on the property itself.
Yes.
At least two.
Yes, that is correct. I spoke to a lady about a year ago, and she offered me a chance to go to Skinwalker Ranch, which I still haven't been able to take her up on that offer. But she said that the ranch is one thing, but everywhere else around it actually has more activity. And if you talk to some of the Native Americans, they have places you could go, and you can actually see them. I mean, you can witness things that are phenomenal. But see, the show itself, I think, is a little bit of a hyped up entertainment push. That's kind of how I look at it. Like, I don't look at it as, and I'm not trying to denounce the work that they're doing, but it just seems like it's made for television, it's made for entertainment versus made for actual research. But needless to say, they've opened the eyes to people who want to continue to go out there, who want to continue to find this stuff. And then it allows you and I to talk about it and put connections together. So I never knew about the Bigfoot. And that's interesting because I've talked to so many people on the Bigfoot subject, Yowies, all of the phenomenon that it's almost like there's a connection. And excuse me, because I'm so excited about this. Like I want to get all this information out. There's like a connection to Bigfoots. There's a connection to some type of spiritual plane or something, maybe a dimensional plane. And there's something that's connected to these extraterrestrials. It's like it's all one big thing, and it's happening so many places. Now here, they talk about the phenomena that's at Skinwalker Ranch, where these creatures look like the Predator. So out of the Predator movie, there's a translucent, you can kind of see the outline of them, but they blend in. They're like chameleons, right? They blend in with the background. But you can still make out a shape of this creature, this entity. These things have been seen in Ohio, which is in, central of the U.S. There's Tennessee, Georgia. There's all these places that I'm interviewing these people, and they're saying, yeah, I saw the exact same thing. So if we take it from a Skinwalker perspective, those tribes are saying, whoa, Skinwalker is just the Navajo and the Ute tribes. That's where that's connected. It's not connected into the central and to the East Coast, but yet the same phenomena is happening there.
Well, this stuff is going on around the world, and there are many names, different names for Bigfoot, and the various phenomena that's associated. Now, I did not have any interest really in Bigfoot until weird things started happening back here. Even though I had a rock thrown by my next to my then girlfriend and myself up on UFO Hill there, I didn't take interest until I realized that these guys actually made contact with me. If you heard that recording, except the Bigfoot people, big people repeated. If they want to get a hold of you, they can. And over at Skinwalker Ranch area there, now there's a lot of open areas there. There's a lot of open space, and I was just thinking, how is it that these beings could move around without being seen? Because there are a lot of big open spaces, and the only way to explain it is if they're coming from another dimension or using sort of technology or some sort of portal. And I began to realize that there's a strong connection between Bigfoot or the Yowies and UFOs. And researcher Stan Gordon over in Pennsylvania, he took a number of reports involving the state police in 1973, where the police had actually been called to Bigfoot-like creatures being right close to people's houses, shooting them at point-blank range, seeing them getting on and off craft.
Really?
And so I've learnt this as I've researched it. Now, I had no idea we even had Bigfoot here in this country. And until real weird stuff started happening, I suspect that some of this is what George Knapp describes as a piggyback effect, which can follow you around the world, no matter where you are, whether you live in a big city, whether you live out in the rural area. It can personally affect you. Now, I understand even Robert Bigelow's wife even started having things happen.
Really?
Now I understand Robert Bigelow, who ran the Skinwalker Ranch scientific study, financed it originally. I understand that stuff even happened at his home. So this stuff can reach out, even if you've never had experience before. It doesn't matter whether you have a religious background. It doesn't matter if you're a hard-nosed skeptic.
Right.
And I have talked to people who claim that they're skeptics and yet had these very anomalous experiences, and some of them are deeply disturbed. They don't even want to talk about it. And the funny thing is, Chris, that some of these the calls, the Bigfoot calls I'm talking about, they are the same as they are in the United States and Canada. I have recorded them over here. I've heard the recording over here. I've heard descriptions from other people. I've heard them myself. They are the same being.
Yeah. So the phenomena is worldwide, just like you said. And if you look at certain, let's just say, conversations on Reddit, Facebook, there's certain groups out there that talk about this stuff. And I think it's a good thing to have this type of communication between researchers and people who are actually going out there like yourself, getting this documented. But I will say this, is that people tend to label this in a specific category, and then there becomes this like disgruntled viewpoint where it's like, well, a skinwalker can't be in such and such country, because it's only native to this Native American tribe. Well, the problem is maybe that's just how they explained it. And then the phenomenon takes place worldwide, and it's explained differently in other countries. And what we have to do as researchers is start to put these pieces together, and we have to say, these things are familiar. What's the familiar aspects of all of these? And then label it as something probably new, because it really is a new phenomenon, right? I mean, it's old, but meaning new as in, can you really label everything as, now we can probably as Bigfoot, but we can't label it as Skinwalker really, because, people get offended by that. But what if we, we talk about UAPs, which is the new thing, putting these under this general classification as we're doing here is, I don't know, it almost seems like it's hindering the research. Does that make sense to you? I don't know if I'm vocalizing this correctly, but my thought point on this is strictly, they are essentially, I think everybody, they're trying to figure this out, but they're not doing the right thing that researchers need to do. They're not looking for the distinction between all of these sightings and then labeling them into certain classifications to say, you can call it a UFO, you can call it a UAP, whatever you want to call it, but it's an aerial phenomenon. It lit up at night. It happened in all of these different locations. That's a similarity. The other similarity is there's these creatures. They're huge. We could call them Bigfoots, Yowies, whatever you want to call them. But they're part of it. And like you said, I didn't even know about one that was entering a spacecraft. And yet so many people, especially over at Skinwalker Ranch, have talked about spacecraft landing in the Uinta Basin and seeing creatures go in and out of it. They've seen that. They've actually seen that. There's witness reports on that. And so if we start taking this data, it's almost like we need to come up with a new way of putting everything together, if that makes sense.
There's one thing I want to say here, that the scientific method does not work on higher intelligence beings. It doesn't work. And they found that out through NIDS, the NIDS. But there's actually a spiritual aspect to the subject. If we treat them like subjects in a petri dish, our experience is not going to be as good. But if you want to really connect with them, it has to be, in my opinion, is on a spiritual level. It's building a relationship with these beings. They are acutely aware of us. They're acutely aware of our circumstances in our lives. Now, the strange thing that I get when I get my recordings, they talk about UFOs. One of the spirit, well, he's like a spirit being. He talks about the UFO that he travels with. Now they know what we call the craft. Well, UFO is kind of the older acronym, but they're very familiar with our culture. How we think. My communications changed. I'm also an instrumental transcommunication researcher. I've been using electronics to communicate with those in other realms for well over a decade now.
Okay.
Now, not many people use ITC to get intel as to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I found around 2019, things started to change from what I'd call dead people, communications with dead people, to another civilization that started communicating with me. They started inviting me out. And some of those audio files, they say, "Thank you for coming, Marc."
So,
and they call my name.
And just so everybody knows, when you mean ITC, do you also mean the same as EVP, so electronic voice phenomenon? Is that similar?
Well, yes. Well, that's a facet to it. Yes.
Okay.
EVP is one facet. I mean, there's various ways that these beings can get messages through.
Mm-hmm.
I know of a parapsychologist who thinks the spirit box is rubbish,
mm-hmm.
but Dr. Konstantin Raudive, a Latvian parapsychologist, well, he was actually a psychologist, but he investigated EVP, and he did a number of experiments involving participants, and he reported receiving thousands of messages in different languages that come across very fast, that seem to give very personal details. But think about it. If these UAPs can fly
mm-hmm.
over nuclear missiles bases
mm-hmm.
and manipulate them,
mm-hmm.
turn them on and off, then they should have no trouble interacting with our electronics.
Correct.
And they told me we work very hard at radio. So however they do it, now I use Faraday shielding material because I don't want false positives. I don't want to waste my time with that. So I've got it pretty good. They'll say my first and last name. They give me very specific details. Look, when they called me out, they said, "You come in doubt." And they said, "We're not going to kill you, Marc. We couldn't kill you, Marc." Okay. So they know that I'm a little nervous,
mm-hmm.
but this stuff is like a movie. This is like multiple movies at the same time. It's unbelievable. I understand why people would look at me and think, "You're nuts. So you must be experiencing psychosis or something."
So do you think that this phenomena is related to the missing 411 by chance?
I suspect personally that there are certain ETs that are taking people. There are portals. Mm-hmm. So I've seen craft that they can just go invisible. If they don't want to be seen, they won't be seen. Mm-hmm. That large sphere that I was talking about mm-hmm. from 2017, that thing just it vanished in front of my eyes. It just faded right in front of me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It just disappeared. I didn't take my eyes off it. They have the technology. I believe that they have trans-dimensional abilities to cross dimensions. I believe also Whitley Strieber has talked about that phenomena involves also the afterlife and those who have passed on. Mm-hmm. It's like when you go down the rabbit hole, there's all these different directions that you get taken.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that they have a grip on the governments of this world? Do you think that there's communication or some type of contact that the governments know about?
Well, I don't know so much about government level. I mean, I know there's reports like Roswell having, bodies, alien bodies, but I did communicate with a former Air Force pilot who served in Vietnam, and he told me that they had a UFO encounter on one of their sorties to do a bombing run. He told me about these craft flew right through, and he said they're traveling extremely fast, But he said everything slowed down all of a sudden. He said the electronics on the plane switched off. And he told me that, well, I know he had a very deep part of the government, of the U.S. government. He was involved in, let's just say, applications where they vet you before you are very highly trusted positions that are very sensitive. He told me he was very aware about what was going on, about different ETs. He said there's ones that are invisible as well, and he said they don't know what those are. I have been approached by things I couldn't see. Now, you mentioned the predator effect.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Bruce Maccleby's wife, Pam Mackleby, was hunting and saw something semi-transparent.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but these things can come to you invisible. They can come into your home. They can follow you home. You can have poltergeist-like phenomena taking place in your home. Things move. It can affect other people. I've had my life saved. Very. I should be dead right now.
Really?
So these beings, they're my friends. They said they protect me. They also mentioned about adopting me for some reason, or saving me. I don't know what that meant. I mean, I know they've saved me, life-wise, but they keep saying about we save you, and I'm not sure quite what that means.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the saving you, though, on the physical. So you're saying you shouldn't be here. How did they save you there in that regard?
Well, after I came back from America, I was on opiates for a very long time because of spine problems. And I was accidentally put on 2 powerful pain meds that should have killed me. In fact, the ambulance people arrived. All of a sudden, I became paranoid. One moment, I thought I was Jesus. Next moment, I thought my spouse was trying to kill me. And it was a horrible nightmare. All of a sudden, this shadow creature came right up to me. Now, I don't know if this was a result of the medication or not, but it went up, it thrust something into my heart area. I suspect that may have saved me. The ambulance people came, and they were surprised that I was still alive.
Huh. Now, I'm under the belief, and I've said this before, that shadow entities do not need to be a negative thing. In fact, any kind of darkness darkness could be also part of a dimensional aspect, to where so many people talk about that in a negative, but then I've also heard of these shadow beings, these creatures that are, it's almost like they're shadow because they're just not reflecting any light. That's the only reason why they're shadow. It's not because that they're demons or any kind of entities. So what you saw, and granted, I will say this, it could have been based on the medication that you were on, but there have been multiple accounts of shadow people, shadow entities, and they've been good. They have done good things. So if this did something to save your life, then I take that as, a credible witness testimony, because I don't think that there's anything to say otherwise, because there's just no, when we look at the stories, when we look at everything that's happening, people say that these entities, there's the Hat Man, which I've done stories on, which is a shadow person who wears a brimmed hat. That type of entity has been seen all over the world. Okay? So that means that entity is directly connected to a lot of people and has shown itself to a lot of people, but it's never harmed anybody. I've never heard of a harmful story. All the stories in my research have always been that it's there. It's part of a a paralyzed, what do they call that? It's not like a night terror, but it's it's where you're paralyzed as you're waking up. You're
hypnagogic state.
Yes. So, yes. And they see these shadow entities. They can't move. They're paralyzed, and I've never had them say that they were harmed. They were just frightened because they couldn't move, because they were in that paralyzed state, because they were seeing things that weren't a normal thing that we see every day, because we're so used to what is in our social culture. Okay, the media puts out what is reality. Science puts out what is reality. And it's just like you said, if they don't want science to figure it out, they'll make sure that science can't detect it or figure it out. You have to do it on a different level. And maybe that goes back to the ancients, because the ancients probably had a different way of communicating with these types of entities as well.
I was with the psychic medium one time, a lady that I helped with severe hauntings. One time, myself and her in a bedroom saw what's described as an old hag, a lady that floated right through the air, only about 7-8 feet in front of us. And we both saw her at the same time. We weren't on any substances. We were fully lucid. Because some scientists say, well, this is just some sort of hallucination of the brain. That when we're going to sleep, our mind, we go into a dreamlike state. But also, that's a state that we can go into to astral travel. We can go into a state. We can travel to other dimensions. We can leave our bodies. Now, I had experiences when I was younger, where I was floated out of my body. And I had experiences with people who passed on. Some I had no knowledge of, relatives who've been dead for a very long time. And those experiences can be very comforting. Now, I want to just put this out there. There are some very dangerous entities as well. There are some that have the ability to kill people. I've had my throat cut. I've been punched in the face by some of these entities. I've been burnt, scratched. I've been under siege myself. I've seen the full spectrum, as much as a person can in their life, and some of this is recorded. The more positive stuff. Now, I had to learn about what's called as psychic self-defense.
Okay.
Because if you have any sensitivity to these other dimensions, your life can be turned upside down. You can have the spirits of those who passed on coming to you for help. They could be touching you in your bed. They can be some of them people that haven't crossed over, so to speak, could be in a very panicked state. So they're looking for someone in the flesh that they can grab onto, someone who hears them. So there's definitely, to me, there's a spiritual aspect to connecting to what's piloting the UFOs, what's going on in these hauntings. There's other dimensions that are at play. There's also a theory that with poltergeist-like phenomena, which occurred over at Skinwalker Ranch to the Sherman family, it's happened to me, it's happened to some other people, that it may be a form of psychokinesis, where I know Dr. Barry Taff, parapsychologist, quite well known, has studied, he says thousands of hauntings, but basically a disturbed individual in a very dramatic situation there may be like teenagers involved, where the energy may just be ripe. There may be a battery type effect that enables certain entities to use that to manifest in quite terrifying ways, very powerful ways. Now, I noticed what we might call poltergeist phenomena taking place in Bigfoot areas, ripping down these giant trees. I mean, snapping mature, healthy trees. I mean, what has the energy to rip these trees down? I don't know. I suspect it was the Bigfoot people, because they had given me an invite. There's so many very strange things that happened to me, and I'm really glad that some of it's recorded, because I need it. I need to know that it's not Marc experiencing mental illness.
Yeah.
These beings are reaching out. They can get involved in your very personal life.
Yeah, I've had that happen before. I've actually had it happen more so since I've been doing these talks, which is really interesting, because as we started diving into the program and we started talking to people who had hauntings and people who had interactions with dimensional creatures, that has been something that now I'm having more stuff happen in my own home, which is really intriguing. And it's not necessarily terrifying, but it's interesting to me, because the more that I dig deeper into this, I'm starting to realize that there's more to this life than just the physical, which I've always believed in. I've always been a huge open-minded person when it comes to the paranormal. But when you start to have these experiences happen to you, that's when you start to really wake up to it all. Because even skeptics, like you said, I mean, until they really have something that happens and that they can't explain, that's when they become a little bit more intrigued and involved in it. You know, I do have a question for you, though, on the spiritual side of things. So you were talking about I guess these negative entities. So more something that somebody would call demonic. Somebody would say that they're evil, but I think that those are just those are labels that we're using on people. But here's the thing that I'm trying to get at: the physical world is full of people who are negative, full of people who are trapped in depression, anxiety, hatefulness. Right? There's a lot of that stuff that's happening right now, but there's also people who are positive. People who are very good-natured. They only want the best for the world. They want the best for people. They love, they care, versus hate. Do you think that that's something that carries on into these other dimensions as a spiritual entity? Or do you think that that's something that is created because we live in a dualistic reality?
Well, I think there could be, a couple of things that could be happening. Yes, we can draw bad stuff to us if there's a lot of bad energy in a home. Yes, that can definitely draw things in. Our own lifestyle can help protect us, though it's not 100%. Mm-hmm. Like I've known very religious people who have hauntings and they can't get rid of the beings that are in the house, and you have to wonder, is some of the phenomena reflected by what we do in our lives? The law of attraction kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But there are beings in these other dimensions. Just think of it like the Earth. There's all kinds of people in this world, isn't there?
Right.
I mean, you've got people that go around that don't tell the truth. Mm-hmm. You can't trust anything they say. You got people that go around that kill other people. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have no conscience whatsoever. Right. They have absolutely no ethics, no morals.
Right. And then there's people who are really good.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is in these other dimensions, it's really no different. There's still, there's the good and then there's the bad as well.
Yes. And in between.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So when you've encountered these creatures, and I want to say too, the other thing I want to bring up, I was looking at this picture that you sent, and it looks like there is a creature standing behind some leaves. It looks like a silhouette of a Bigfoot. That's what it looks like to me. But it seems to have this, it's kind of like that predator look, but not really. Like it seems like it's camouflaged in. Is that, am I looking at it the correct way? What you sent me?
Yes. Well, what happened on that day, I took someone with me. I've been filming this documentary. Mm-hmm. I took somebody else who has a lot of interest in New Zealand's Bigfoot and also is well versed to Maori folklore regarding them. I took this man in, and he heard these very strange voices there, this knocking on the tree. We came across these footprints.
Yep.
Big, some of them were very big.
Yep.
And
I have those here.
Right in this, right in this area where I got that picture. Now, I didn't see him at the time. I just was taking pictures in the area, and I went through them months later very carefully, and he's up on the slope. Now, that slope, I flew a drone up trying to find the same shape. I also climbed down it. It's very slippery, that slope. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, you can break your neck. But I could not find that shape when I flew my drone back over there. So I tried to debunk. I tried to debunk what I get too, where
Sure.
possible.
Sure. Now, when you've had these experiences with the Bigfoot creatures, is it the same thing as you experience with other entities? So are there negative Bigfoots and positive ones?
Well, I think that there may be certain individuals that might be negative, just like there is humanity. But I think on the whole, most of them are highly empathic, just like us.
Okay.
All the stuff that happened at Skinwalker Ranch, no humans were killed. Now it's a different story with the animals, with 20 or so cattle that got mutilated,
Right.
and the cats that went missing, the dogs that got destroyed. Three of the dogs that chased one of these blue orbs that were flying around the cattle that just got vaporized or whatever. But the phenomena seems to be connected to us, like they don't want to harm us. Overall, I'm saying they don't want to harm. Now I personally have come across some very bad stuff that does want to harm us. But as far as the Bigfoot phenomena, and they could quite easily get any of us out there. We would not stand a chance.
Sure.
The way they move, how strong they are, how intelligent they are, we would not stand a chance. Now, they can get involved in your personal life.
I want to thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. We talk about a lot of crazy stuff here, so if you want to hear more, just like and subscribe to the channel. It'd really help us out a lot. And plus, if you have a crazy story, whether it be an alien abduction, near-death experience, or something of the paranormal, or a glitch in the matrix, please let us know. Share it in the comments. We'd love to have you on the show.